In the scorching Canaan desert, where sand burns under a relentless sun, a woman left an indelible mark. Could an unheralded figure wielding no sword shift a nation's fate with a single choice? Jael, with steady hands grasping a humble tent peg, faced and vanquished the mightiest general, becoming a symbol of sacred justice. Her story is not just a triumph over darkness, but a journey brimming with grace and unwavering faith. Each step Jael took, each fearless heartbeat, proved faith sharper than any blade. Join us to uncover this untold tale and feel the power hidden in an ordinary soul. Subscribe to not miss this inspiring journey. Beneath the pale Canaan sky, where the sun scorched sand grains into a million glowing needles, Jael stepped from her tent, bare feet sinking into the parched earth. The wind swirled fine dust, whispering like ancient spirits, while the relentless sun hung high, its heat searing. Each morning at the edge of that harsh desert, the Kenite family's tent stood as a fragile refuge in the vast expanse, carrying the hope of survivors. As Heber's wife, a neutral figure in a land torn by conflict, Jael wore no warrior's garb, nor grasped a sword. Her tent, soft and glowing in the day's final light, sat beside a dusty path linking Canaanite strongholds to Israelite valleys. Footprints of merchants, warriors, and wanderers marked it, bringing harp strains, prayers, and the laments of the bereaved. Inside, the tent hummed with warmth, lit by a flickering fire. Jael deftly threaded a needle, her eyes tracing linen patterns. The clink of a simmering pot, the faint scent of grain and wild onion wove a symphony of life and hope. These tasks seemed simple, yet to Jael, each stitch, each breath held sacred meaning, a quiet thanks to the Creator for strength to press on. In a rare silent moment, Jael lifted her head, listening. Distant hoofbeats echoed like a tolling bell. She recalled scattered reports. A village beyond the hill razed, bodies strewn, cries tearing hearts. News of Sisera's Canaanite forces surged like a tidal wave, sowing dread among Israelites. Yet, amid shared fear, Jael's heart refused indifference. Deborah, Israel's prophetess, rallied the people, painting victory with promises of justice and freedom. From every corner, the weary and oppressed turned to her, seeking a final spark of hope. Jael realized women like Deborah weren't born powerful, but were guided by sacred missions and steadfast faith. And she, an ordinary woman, stood at fate's crossroads. Each night as Canaan's sky spilled a tapestry of stars, Jael knelt by a scrap of cloth, whispering prayers. She didn't beg the world, only clarity for her heart, to know her role when the moment came. Deep within, faith's ember glowed, ready to blaze into justice's fire. Her spirit grew calm, but her eyes, reflecting the fire's dim glow, held resolve and belief in something greater than herself. Jael's position, straddling neutrality, was a double-edged blade. She sought no enemies, yet could not ignore spreading injustice. Ties with Sisera once ensured safety, but now, as he wrought suffering, Jael knew silence was no option. This wasn't a choice, but conscience's call. No warrior, she wielded faith and resolve sharper than any blade. Within the tent, each letter passed, each traveler's tale struck Jael like stones lodging in her soul. Day by day, stories of displaced lives, villages reduced to ash, mothers cradling lifeless children, fueled an urge. She must act. The act might be small, but its impact could rival an army's. In fitful dreams, Jael saw radiant light pierce her tense seams, an unseen voice urging, "This is your hour." She woke, heart heavy with images of threatened lives. She didn't know her path, but her pulse sang a melody fiercer than prophecy, faith and justice entwined with an ordinary woman's heartbeat. Canaan's raw, fierce beauty awaited a turning point. In that vastness, Jael's story began to unfold, a tale of a woman without sword or legion, yet armed with strength to etch history. No gilded figure, her true heart and steadfast faith were her sharpest weapons. In the silent pause before her choice, Jael understood. Justice wasn't only on battlefields, but in hearts that dared act. Step with her and feel the quiet power of faith and courage. In a rare, tranquil moment of the desert afternoon, as the day's final rays gilded the dunes, Jael tightened her tense ropes with care. The air hung heavy with heat, scorching her skin. Suddenly, urgent hoofbeats thundered, stirring clouds of dust. Jael's heart stilled, her eyes narrowing to discern the stranger on the horizon. A man staggered forward, haggard, sweat-soaked, each breath a desert sea. Sisera, Canaan's fearsome general, once a harbinger of terror, now a defeated fugitive, fleeing in despair. Sisera collapsed beside the tent, eyes wild with panic. Crushed by Barak and Deborah's Israelite forces, his glory and spirit shattered, he stood alone. No banner, no war chariot, just a weary body clinging to faint hope of refuge. Bowing, he pleaded for water, for rest, trusting the Canaanites' neutrality as a shield. But Jael no longer saw the familiar guest through naive eyes. She'd heard too many tales of his atrocities. Villages burned, innocents slain, mothers weeping over lifeless children. Silently, she absorbed these stories, letting them weave a tapestry of shared pain in her heart and mind. Now, as Sisera staggered to her tent, Jael faced a defining moment. Between the code of hospitality and justice's call, which voice would she heed? The fading light slipped through tent seams, casting a somber resolve on Jael's face. She recalled last night's dream, a radiant beam piercing dark clouds, a spiritual sign urging her toward a sacred mission. Yet reason warned, alone, unarmed, how could she face a battle-hardened general? The vast, barren desert outside echoed her solitude and lurking fear. Amid Sisera's gasping breaths, Jael realized, sparing him would deny compassion, aiding him would betray conscience, letting a criminal sow more pain. Emotions clashed fiercely. She inhaled deeply, steadying the surge within. Then, with a gentle smile, she nodded, inviting him in. The gesture seemed welcoming, but her eyes held no softness, only resolve and a long-brewing plan. Inside, Sisera drank greedily from the cool milk she offered, collapsing under her care. She draped a coarse blanket over his shoulders, her trembling hands adjusting a simple pillow. Each tender act masked the prelude to a life or death choice. Jael studied his slowing breaths, his thudding pulse, a sign of vulnerability. She told herself, now is the time. An inner bell tolled, urging her forward. The desert beyond, its dunes fading in dusk, seemed to beckon her to claim her role in history. She wasn't Deborah armed with prophecy, but Jael knew her ordinariness held power. She trusted the dream's light, faith's guidance, and justice's cry, echoing the oppressed's sighs. The moment arrived swiftly. As Sisera sank into exhausted sleep, Jael rose silently. In her hands, a tent peg, a nomad's tool turned fate's weapon. No hesitation, no fear. Each step toward her foe affirmed her courage. Each heartbeat pulsed with faith's command to act. Sweat beaded her brow, mingling with dim light through tent slits, crafting a scene both sacred and stark. In the hush, as Jael raised the peg, she felt unseen eyes upon her. Mothers who'd lost children, Deborah and Barak awaiting news, faith itself guarding this justice. With a fierce, decisive strike, she drove the peg through Sisera's temple, ending his reign of terror. Blood soaked the earth, and the desert held its breath, as if justice's plea was fulfilled. As hoofbeats neared, Barak rushed in, eyes tense. Jael said nothing, only beckoned him deeper, revealing the fallen enemy. Barak staggered, awestruck. A woman without arms or army had turned the tide. Jael stood silent, no cheers, no pride. Just a living portrait of courage and steadfast faith. Her cost wasn't just sweat and tears, but the weight of justice's burden. She knew even as Israel rejoiced, questions would linger. Was she right? Would the Almighty approve her bold act? Yet as a breeze carried scents of dry grass and desert earth, Jael felt peace. A sacred call had guided her, and her mission was done. Jael's initial conflict isn't just a biblical moment, but a timeless message. When choosing between personal safety and justice, courage stems not from swords or soldiers, but from a heart heeding faith's call. Jael crossed fear's boundary, becoming a beacon for generations seeking justice and hope. As Sisera sank into deep sleep, his haggard face softened in the thick silence of the tent. Jael sat quietly beside him, knees drawn up, eyes tracing his steady breaths. The man who'd sown terror. Outside, the desert stirred after a day of blazing sun, air cooling, northwest winds slipping through tent seams, hissing across ropes like distant prophecies. Feeling the shift from day's heat to night's chill, Jael knew her moment of decision had come. She rose softly, wary of waking him. The tent's shadows danced in faint moonlight, casting stark contrasts of light and dark, mirroring her inner turmoil. Compassion versus justice, hospitality's code versus faith's sacred call. In her hand, the rough tent peg, both familiar tool and weighty duty. She gripped its cloth-wrapped handle, steadying her strength, each slow breath marking steps toward fate. Her movements stirred the tent, fabric rustling, winds through gaps weaving eerie sounds that heightened every sense. She heard sand grains grinding outside, her heart pounding in her chest. Each step tested her courage. Could she go through with it? Yet deep within, her nightly prayers echoed, "Lord, grant me wisdom and strength to do what's right." That wordless plea became her guiding lamp, illuminating the path ahead. Glancing skyward, Jael saw a crescent moon hanging gently amid a glittering Milky Way. Its frail light seeped through the tent, bathing Sisera's calm face. Time seemed to pause. Night dew hung on canvas, all eerily still. Jael closed her eyes, letting her mind settle. savoring the desert night's cool, the scent of dry grass and damp sand. She recalled burned villages, mothers clutching lifeless children, Israel's faint cries under oppression. These were why she couldn't turn away. Again, she touched the peg's handle, its rough grain a testament to her resilience. She thought of Heber, her husband, whose neutrality shielded their family. This act might cost him, but bold choices sometimes birth true justice. She resolved, it's time to rise. For justice, for silent sighs, for trust in God's guidance. Bowing her head, Jael whispered a final prayer. Lord, grant me fortitude, courage to follow your will. The words resounded in her mind, an unseen force lifting her steps. She moved over the sandy rug, nearing Sisera. Her senses sharpened, catching every sound. Dry leaves rustling, fabric brushing earth, her racing heart beat. As she drew close, Sisera slept on, chest rising in weary rhythm. The sight stirred both pity and resolve. She raised the peg to shoulder height, its familiar weight laced with intense strain. Her heart grew strangely calm. No petty doubts, only the act ahead. With a deep breath, she drove the peg through Sisera's temple with precise, unyielding force. A sharp crack, wood-piercing bone rang out, then faded. Blood splashed the tense fabric, pooling on the sand, marking a line between darkness and justice's dawn. Sisera twitched once, then lay still. Silence crashed in. Jael stood, hands stained red, chest heaving, eyes wide, calmly surveying her deed. No exultation, no regret, just a sacred stillness filling the space. Moments later, she stepped back, setting the peg beside Sisera's body. Kneeling, hands on the earth, she gazed at the starry sky. A strange relief and peace washed over her, as if a holy mission was complete. Long nights of prayer and reflection now gave way to a new song of freedom and hope. Outside, hoofbeats sounded again. Barak and his Israelite band arrived, his eyes tense. Jael stepped out, her voice soft but clear. This is justice's end. Barak, seeing the lifeless foe, froze in awe. A woman, unarmed, had turned history. Jael offered no explanation. Her gaze said all. Justice was served not by swords, but by faith and courage. Barak bowed, then knelt before Sisera's body, honoring her daring. The scene stunned onlookers. An ordinary woman, through extraordinary faith, became God's hand of justice, sparking hope for a nation. Night winds whistled through the tent, carrying victory's scent and hope. Jael glanced at Barak, then beyond, to the Kenite grove's green shade, heralding a bright dawn. In that moment, Jael knew her act would echo in history, not just as one woman's mark, but as proof of faith's power. She returned to the tent, cleaning the peg and bloodied fabric. All was restored, save the eternal imprint of justice. Jael would resume weaving, cooking, tending family, but her heart would forever blaze with faith and courage, reminding her anyone could be justice's tool by crossing fear, heeding the sacred call, and acting for what's right. Soon after, hoofbeats thundered again through the dusty dunes. Under a sky gilded by dusk, Barak galloped to the Kenite's humble tent, his urgent gaze sweeping the scene. He'd raced desert trails, tracking Sisera, the dreaded foe who'd razed villages. But stepping past the tent's flap, he didn't find a warrior fighting to his last breath. Only Sisera's lifeless body, a tent peg fixed through his skull, an undeniable mark of an extraordinary act. Barak froze mid-tent, needing moments to trust his eyes. They widened, mouth agape, as he stood beside the corpse of a man who'd made nations tremble. The scene defied every battle plan he'd imagined. A woman, wielding no blade, backed by no army, had felled Canaan's mightiest general alone. His awe wasn't just for the unexpected end, but for the moment's magnitude. A pivotal shift etched into Israel's history. Jael met his gaze, her eyes calm yet heavy with pride and responsibility. With a slight nod, she invited him deeper, then turned to the vast desert. Her eyes traced endless dunes where winds carved sinuous curve. In that instant, she knew her act didn't just end an enemy's life. It sparked hope for Israel, a promise of liberation and proof that justice could prevail, even through the frailest hands. Barak approached, still fixed on Sisera's body. He spoke softly, but Jael didn't answer, only raised a hand, pointing to the boundless desert. The gesture reminded him that history wasn't solely forged in grand battles or gleaming swords, but in silent choices made in solitude's shadow. Her decision, though contentious, saved countless lives, ending Sisera's reign of terror. Barak bowed deeply, honoring her courage, a common woman with an uncommon soul. A gentle breeze swept through, carrying the desert night's cool. Jael lifted her eyes to the first stars twinkling in the twilight sky. In that moment, she felt the Almighty's presence, a quiet affirmation. Her task was done. Justice served. Every sleepless night, every bead of sweat on the sand, now held profound meaning. Doubt and fear vanished, replaced by deep peace in her heart. Strange hoofbeats sounded afar, signaling Israel's army nearing. They would arrive, witnessing a tale too wild to believe. A slight woman with a crude tent peg had shifted a war's tide. As Barak's troops entered, they saw Jael standing tall beside Sisera's body, desert winds tossing her hair, her eyes aglow with indescribable pride. These mighty warriors bowed to the woman who'd done what legions couldn't, restored hope to weary souls. Jael's story, though sparsely noted in annals, echoes powerfully across generations. Justice sometimes needs no sword, only a courageous heart. In today's world, facing inequity, oppression, or helpless silence, Jael's tale calls us to rise. Without armies or arms, we can be justice's vessels by heeding faith's call and acting. Barak finally spoke, voice warm. "You've saved Israel." Jael offered a faint smile, eyes still on the distant desert. She knew her mission didn't end. It began anew in every awakened heart. As the army departed, their footsteps marked the sand, a reminder that justice had spread and would endure, timeless and boundless. In the desert night stillness, Jael stood, radiating humble yet unyielding strength. She returned to the tent, gathering scraps of cloth and the history-stained peg, tucking them in a corner. The scene closed, leaving only courage's tale, carried forever by desert winds. In every listener's heart, Jael remains a symbol of small acts bearing vast worth. At last, as the desert's quiet caves echoed only with winds curling through dry dunes, Sisera lay forever stilled beneath a silver moon, and Israel tasted freedom's breath after long, weary years. News of the cruel general's death spread like wildfire across parched plains, igniting radiant hope in oppressed hearts. Crowds gathered around the Kenite tents, where Jael, the unassuming woman none foresaw, had forged a historic turning point. Their gazes, brimming with pride and gratitude, saw in her the hero they'd long awaited. Jael wore no gleaming armor, wielded no shining sword. Clad in a rough woolen cloak, hands stained with dried blood, her eyes blazed with fervent faith. Deborah, Israel's prophetess, wove her tale into a victory song, its words a torch for generations to come. Jael's name echoed across the wilderness, passed from lip to lip, proving faith and courage heed no bounds of gender, status, or might. Yet Jael's greatness stemmed not just from vanquishing a foe. Her extraordinariness bloomed in the moment she heeded a divine call and acted, despite all peril. When her heartbeat synced with faith's pulse, Jael knew she wasn't merely shielding a family or tribe, but fulfilling the Almighty's will. Her bold act wasn't just for Sisera, it was for a nation craving justice and freedom. The image of Jael before her tent, desert winds lifting her hair, eyes fixed on boundless dunes, became a vivid portrait of inner strength. She was remembered not only as a military feat, but as hope's emblem for those at life's crossroads. Endure silently or rise for justice. Jael chose the latter, and with steadfast courage, she reshaped history's flow. Across generations, Jael's story resonates, reminding us that small acts, guided by faith, yield vast outcomes. In today's world facing inequities, abuse of power, society's apathy, or fate's harshness, we can all be new Jaels. No weapons or armies needed, just a heart that understands, a firm faith, and courage to speak, to act. Imagine a world where each person dares say no to injustice and yes to justice. Jael's tale would no longer be a distant story on ancient pages, but a living pulse within us. Each time you aid the oppressed or defend truth, you stoke hope's flame. You needn't do grand deeds, just be brave enough not to look away. In the Abrahamic tradition, faith isn't a mystic veil, but a guiding lamp in darkness. When Jael gazed at the starry sky, she wasn't alone. She saw the Almighty's companionship, truth's light paving her path. Amid modern life's rush, we may forget our inner voice, but pausing to face hardship and ask, "What does God want of me?" sparks all change. Jael's story teaches that ordinary doesn't mean insignificant. An everyday person daring to speak and act for right, it becomes a bridge between hope and reality. They inspire timid souls. Showing courage isn't innate, but forged through resolute choices, step by step, past fear. Like a ceaseless river, Jael's song echoes in Israel's heart, then ripples worldwide. As you hear her tale, let it sink into your soul, fueling you to face challenges. Trust that with love and faith, you can shake the world around you. Jael did it. She rose from ordinariness to become justice's icon for those yearning for hope. Now, what will you do today? Let her story be your torch, reminding you that within each of us lies the power to transform lives, to change the world. Let no fear bar your path. Hear your inner call and boldly answer, "I'm ready." If this story touched your heart, hit the subscribe button. Share it with friends in America and beyond, letting faith and courage's flame spread. Leave a comment below, sharing a moment you acted for what's right. May God bless each step on your journey to bring justice and love to this world. Don't miss our next tales of extraordinary biblical women who quietly reshaped the world with faith and resolve.